Greetings gamers, I'm Shootgabao, and at the time I'm writing this, I've just released the area ranking video and it's already popping off. Thank you guys so much for the support on that one, but it's time to keep chugging along. Today, I'm going to be making a very unique video, that being a ranking of every Pikmin type, specifically in Pikmin 4. We'll be doing the rankings based on how much usage they see, how useful they are, their design philosophy in general in terms of this game, and general things like that. Basically, if they're utilized well and are useful, they're high, and if they aren't, they're low. With that, let's go ahead and hop right into it with our number 9 spot. Unfortunately, the least useful type in this game seems to be one of, if not the most useful from the last game, that being the Rock Pikmin. First off, they were assassinated in terms of utility, with crystal walls and sometimes scutter chocks being the only thing they're needed for. OG at least can't do a thing against the former, but his dash and him letting you bunch up your Pikmin, letting them avoid the crushing crystal balls, make these enemies a cakewalk with or without rocks. In terms of combat, they're alright, and they're nice before the purples, doing damage when thrown and being able to avoid crushing attacks like from the Emperor and Sovereign Bullblacks. However, the purples just do pretty much everything they do, but so much better with their impact damage and clinging. It's unfortunate, but rocks are just way too outclassed to have any real use. And moving on to a number 8 spot, Miyamoto must have had a real issue with the Pikmin 3 types because the winged Pikmin are just as useless in this game as the rocks. Sure, they have a few niche use cases and Dandori challenges that set the wings above them, but they're just so underutilized in a game with white Pikmin and Ochi. They're just not valuable enough for transporting things to warrant a whole Pikmin type slot. Of course, every type sees at least some use to 100% the game, which is something to keep in mind, but the wings just don't get enough use outside of what's actually required to put them any higher. One weird thing about the wings is they apparently have a crushing immunity, which makes them very useful for the groovy Longlegs fight, which I guess makes sense for why they're found in the below-grade discotheque, but besides that, there's not really that many other niche uses for them. Moving on to the slightly useful types, you have the yellow Pikmin. When I first learned that electricity could take out Pikmin again, I was hyped and thought that maybe yellows could finally be able to surpass their usefulness in 2. However, that idea never really came to fruition, as electricity took the sideline past the blossoming Arcadia, and almost everything that the yellows can do, OG can do better. Need to dig something up? OG or even the rest of your squad can have it done in an instant. Need to reach a high-up treasure? 4 times out of 5, OG can just knock it down. They at least have a small niche in Dandori because of their digging speed, but that doesn't really give them enough to justify putting them much higher. They're at least useful early game, but fall off quickly. Another type that fulfills that niche is the Reds, but they at least get to do it for longer. Red Pikmin are legitimately very useful early on, being able to take on the litany of fire hazards and fire-themed enemies that the other types and even Ochi at this point can't. They deal with tough enemies alongside the ices, and you're bound to have a lot of them if you manage your resources well in the early game. They fall off later, but not as quickly as the yellows thanks to the fire starters. As a concept, fire starters are a great way to keep Reds relevant in a game with so many other offensive options as well as Ochi. However, they end up feeling a bit cumbersome and repetitive as they go on, and a different use akin to Yellow's electricity conducting in 3 could have been better. Maybe if enough Reds rubbed together and created enough heat, they could burn through bundles of sticks and light the fires that the fire starters were used for. It is what it is though, and the Reds unfortunately are still just mid. We're moving on to the Pikmin that see a lot of use now, mostly due to how important their roles tend to be. In terms of the white Pikmin, that's due mostly to just how much use they see in the late game. First off, the Sniff Saver is an upgrade obtained fairly later on, though a diligent player will often grab it when it first pops up. This means that the whites will have usage alongside OG for longer. Second, the final area, the Primordial Thicket, is chock full of poison hazards from the toxic sticky molds, the moldy slooches, and the toxstool found in the very first sublevel of Cavern for a King. They're also the best type for transporting treasures, being able to transport things faster to help you time your idlers alerts and when you get back to the Beagle, not just in Dandori, but also just general gameplay or even speedruns. White Pikmin are very valuable, but still could have been utilized more. A lot of this honestly comes down to Nintendo wanting to show off the ices along with the sheer volume of content and ideas in this game, leaving some types forgotten more than others. The whites managed to get away pretty well, all things considered though. Another type that sees a lot of use in this game is, of course, the blues. Just like always, there's a ton of water in Pikmin 4, and I'd say even more so than in past games. Multiple caves have flooded sublevels, and a gold castle also exists, along with water geysers and sprinklers being a thing. Granted, you'll want to turn off every sprinkler anyway, but being able to go through them with your blues is very nice. They're a pure utility type, but the utility they provide lets you actually play a huge chunk of the game, and the experience simply isn't the same without using blues a lot. They're essential to the games, and this one even more so. Sure, they don't have a lot that's special about them, but they honestly don't need any. I mean, yeah, they could use it to make them more interesting, but they're fine as they are, I guess. Finally, it's time to talk about the 3 Pikmin we all knew were going to be up in the top 3. These are the Pikmin you'll always want on your squad no matter what the challenge due to their sheer utility and combat power. Starting off this bunch is the purple Pikmin, boasting the fastest enemy kills in the game, though somewhat lacking in terms of utility. Now, to be fair, being able to carry objects using 10 times the strength of other Pikmin is great, and is particularly useful in Dandori challenges, but their strength is less useful in terms of carrying things and much more in terms of combat. The purple's Stomp attack is back, albeit lacking the stun chance that made them so busted in 2. However, However, they don't really need it, since now just latching onto any enemy deals damage. They don't need the stomp when you can simply throw a few at a bulborb and watch it disintegrate like the purple Pikmin or Thanos, and the wildlife is the other half of the population that disappeared. They also have been nerfed to dealing 1.5 times damage rather than their 2 times from Pikmin 2, but that's more than enough, letting the damage they deal as a group grow exponentially as you throw more and more. Overall, the purple Pikmin are back in full force and easily earn a top 3 ranking. Next up is the interesting case with the ghostly glow Pikmin. These guys are only naturally found during night missions, and they're great here, being immune to every hazard and being able to stun enemies with a huge glow mob attack. While they tend to get a bit one-note after a while, they keep the night missions engaging and make a suitable successor to the Bulkman. Speaking of which, completing night missions gives you glow seeds you can use to spawn glow Pikmin in the main story, but only in caves. This is an interesting use, since with the 3 Pikmin limit, this lets you bring Pikmin types that you might want but not need, and then spawn a few of these guys to take care of hazards. They're designed well enough to add a great deal of diversity to the game in this way, and you can even use their glow mob if you get enough of them. While not quite OP like the other 2 top 3 placers, I personally think their design philosophy is outstanding enough to net them this spot. I debated putting them below the purples, but ended up putting them above. Comment your thoughts on this down below. And now, you all knew who was going to be up here. The sheer utility paired with the busted combat abilities of the Ice Pikmin net them a 100% deserved top 1 placement. Now, we all knew the Ices were going to see much more puzzle usage than any other type, but they do so much in this game. Freezing water is an amazing use, letting you and your Pikmin cross bodies of water and carry things across them. They're also crucial for freezing the Hydro Jelly found in many caves, as well as being almost required for the multiple freezing sublevels the other Pikmin can't handle. They're utilized so much that it almost feels artificially skewed in their favor, which makes sense considering that they're this game's new featured Pikmin, and they follow in the footsteps that the Purple and Rock Pikmin walked in before them. Speaking of which, the Ice Pikmin are borderline game-breaking in terms of combat. While that may be hyperbole, what they do break is the frozen bodies of their enemies. It doesn't take long for the Ices to freeze enemies, and once they do, they essentially function as a free bitter spray, making the enemies unable to move, though they do take less damage in return. That doesn't matter a whole lot when you'll often have at least one strong Pikmin type in your party, along with OG being incredible late game. I could go on and on providing examples, but if you're watching this video, there's a pretty good chance you expected this anyway, so I'll just save your time and place the Ices right at the top where they belong. And there we have it! This ranking was a lot of fun to do, and hopefully you agree. If you don't, then comment down below why not, to give me some free engagement before throwing yourself into the Hall of Heroes. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, because my Pikmin 4 kick isn't quite over yet. Join my Discord server and follow me on Twitter, both linked in the description, and feel free to donate on Patreon or Ko-Fi so I can afford to keep buying Gatorade to fuel my addiction. Thanks, marching band. With that though, I've got to get to work on my next video, which may or may not be a boss ranking, so stay tuned for that. But until then, this is Shoot Kapow, over and out.